Thank you, Adrienne, for organizing all this, and thank you, Sarah, for your help, and thanks, Sarah, for bringing it all in. And yeah, to tell you a little bit more about this project called Home Stores, I started photographing myself in different rooms actually before I had kids, and it started to happen when I was working on my documentary projects. I was working in Latin America and traveling all over the world. And in the evenings I didn't know what to do, because usually I didn't want to go to a bar on my own or to a restaurant. So I stuck it out inside my hotel room, but I was kind of bored. So I kind of rearranged the hotel room. I was still working in black and white, and I had a tripod, and then I just did different things in front of the TV. So in a way it was like the observation of myself in these strange environments. Then I became a mother, and my whole universe changed again. I thought I had it all mapped out, and I knew how the world worked, but I definitely was thrown for a little loop. I mean, of course, I love my kids, and I want to stay close to them. So it means that my traveling was much closer to home than before. It was kind of going to the end of my driveway, or where I could put the kids strapped in the back of the car and drive somewhere to Montauk or to Patchogue. And what I did when my youngest son, when Max was like 4 or 5, I just would take them on these little road trips and just stop at places that looked interesting to me and try to create a narrative. So these are all conceptual photographs, which is a difference with my earlier books, which are mostly social documentary photography. My first book was about death rituals in Latin America. My second book was a look at America and a little bit the sad, reflective side of the American dream. And my third book was about Germany, called Shadow Home. And so in a way, what keeps all my books together conceptually is it's a question of about identity and home and place. So in this sense, it's a continuation. In another sense, it's a totally different window to the world. First of all, it's my first book in color. I think once I started having kids, I saw the world in color, right? Everything was like much more intense, and you really look through the world through a different prism. Okay, for the people of you on this side, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the images because they're kind of metaphors for different scenarios. So in my mind, I kind of observe things like I'm very much interested in history of art. So I always loved land art and things that you can do with the land, like an intervention. And then I had this idea to use laundry and fabrics to recreate like a land sculpture. And there's a famous sculpture by Smithson, which is done of like big stones in the desert and laid out. So I recreated the spiral out of laundry. And in a way it's like this ironic commentary of the repetition of a mundane task that we have to deal with, but we don't really want to think about. And on the other hand is my kid that's running towards me, and I'm facing my kid, but I'm kind of like kept in this spiral of laundry. Trapped, but then again, it's textile, so you can jump over it, step over it. Another thing what I became interested in, I mean, I have 2 boys, so that was a whole new opening for me to see the world out of the eyes of a child who is a boy. I mean, all these little Lego figurines or bionicles or little objects that suddenly became my world, like picking them up, looking them up close. So what I started to do is, like, when I was surrounded by too much chaos, I created these grids and I tried to recreate like an order that did not exist in everyday life, and sometimes it would be lining up little toys and rephotographing, or collecting household objects like lint or little pieces of soap and rearranging them. For me it was like more like a performance project or so, that you find in the little aspects of domestic life kind of a grounding factor. You can be creative still, although I might be a housewife. And another thing was, of course, probably we all from the generation that our mothers read Betty Friedan and the Feminine Mystique. So it was like this generation that had mostly moved out to the suburbs, and they were supposed to be really happy because they had the big house and the big car and the happy family, but suddenly they asked themselves, what do we do here? What is our identity? What is our purpose? So in a way, I think we are a generation further ahead, so which means like we thought we knew what our identity was, because we already had, like, most of us had kids later, so we worked, we knew how things work. But in a lot of ways, I think society still hasn't managed to create the perfect equilibrium to give like enough space, emotionally, mentally, for the family and for the work at the same time. So I think my project in a way is an extension to really try to kind of refigure these things that sometimes we need to walk away and get this mental space for ourselves to be creative, to be imaginative, or to create also the space to be alone. So where I photograph sometimes in my own home because it's great. It's like an open photo studio that never closes and it never ceases to inspire me. But I also use my friends' homes. I also use public environments. I photographed in laundromats, I photographed in thrift stores, I photographed in clothing stores. And what's also part of my way of working is that sometimes you put yourself in a strange situation and have people react to you because you kind of go outside of their spectrum, what is normal or not. And sometimes you really can have like interesting interactions to question why things work a certain way or not. Because I dress up, the dress code is also very important for me. On one hand, it's kind of inspired by these kind of 50s advertisings where there was a more formal way of women to dress. I mean, if you would leave the house, you would dress up, and you would wear a skirt, a white skirt, a nice dress code or so. So in a way, the idea to think about what I was going to wear when I was leaving the house to photograph myself on the road was kind of also part of the project. And sometimes, like this, I bought like a house coat from the 50s. It was after I was pregnant or so. Sometimes I just, friends give me clothes or so. And so these two pictures, the blue ones, they were taken in Greece. I lived in Greece for 10 years. And it's kind of a very simple country house. But for me, it's also this idea that you step into a different world, which is very old-fashioned and antiquated, and also is full of metaphors. I mean, all Greek ladies, they have like these very simple rituals. How, I mean, the broom is like a sacred object or so, like, or the way to cook or so. So in a way, like observing these Greek ladies always inspired me to incorporate some aspects into the art project. One of the things what Greek women also do when they leave the house for long periods of time, they wrap up the furniture and the paintings. So in one of the pictures, in one of the photographs, I basically left these kind of wrapped photographs, and I left it as an installation project for a year or so because I thought it was a nice metaphor of something that you can read, but not read, that you can see and not see, that you hide and reveal. Another thing that I'm fascinated by is the idea of a silhouette, a very clearly shape. So what I started doing, also starting really with the kids' projects, is creating little silhouettes. Sometimes it was dancers or Batmans or frogs or horses. But then I started incorporating these little dancing women into my work. So you see this photograph there. I photographed myself behind a quilted curtain, and I cut out these little figurines, women's figurines, running in one direction and me facing the other direction. And in this blue picture, there's a similar thing. I mean, you see it very subtly, but they're hand cut out silhouettes of different figures pasted on the wall.